guys, we have 24 minutes, 10 to read it, so let's just get going quickly. At 4 in the morning, Bob came to wake us up. Time to pack, he whispered to Justin. They'll be walking us down to the trains in an hour or so. Keep it quiet if you want to get ahead. Tucker half opened his eyes. Why can't they bring the trains here, he mumbled. An electrocutor's all? Bob said. A little walk won't hurt you anyway. We'll be riding soon enough. Paige was rubbing her eyes and pulling on her basketball cap. She stood and watched while we took our shelter to bits and packed up the pieces. Merlin woke up too, and when we set up the cutting, she was right behind us. We had to wait for a couple of hours at the barrier before the soldiers would let us through. But as soon as it was light, they started moving us on, marching us into a long, struggling line. It was awkward walking on the track, and Tucker was struggling, so I let him ride on the bike for most of the way. I had to keep my arm tight round his waist to stop him from falling as it bumped over the 8 leapers. Paige was just ahead of us, jogging along with her head down. She looked exhausted, but Tucker leaned forward and called out to her. Hey Paige, will you teach me French? She looked over her shoulder and muttered up a stream of words in a flat, bored voice. Uno, dos, tres, cinco, six, sept, huit, neuf, dix. Nothing clear about that. Anyone can count up to 10 in French, but Tucker thought it was fantastic. Un, deux, trois, he started. Oh, I can't remember it all. Tell me again, slower. I smacked his arm. Leave Paige alone. You don't need to know that stuff. You're English. I was only trying to be kind, but Paige took it the wrong way. She dropped back so she was walking next to Tucker and started teaching them the numbers properly, saying them over and over again and again and again, and I thought she was doing it just to annoy me. It was light by the time we reached the station, and there were 2 trains waiting for us. Both very long. We hadn't seen much of Bob on the way there, because he had been wandering up and down the line, talking to all sorts of people, but here he appeared suddenly and caught hold of Paige's arm. We need to stick together, he said. This is where they split us up. The soldiers were heading people onto platforms, sending some one way and some other. I didn't understand what was happening until we reached the front of the line, and suddenly it was obvious. People with children went on the left-hand train. Everyone else was hitched onto the other one. There was a lot of noise and shoving as people argued with the soldiers, shouting at them to change their minds. What's the matter? Tucker said. Why are those people being so rude? Shh. Justin looked around anxiously. They're upset because they can't stay here. They have to go back through the tunnel. The soldiers waved us through to the left-hand train without even looking at our papers, but they nearly made a mistake with Merlin. She was right behind us, so loaded down with bags that they didn't realise the one on her front was a baby carrier. They tried to push her the other way onto the train that was going back to England. Are you blind? Merlin yelled. Can't you see I've got a child? Look, there's no way I'm taking her back. The soldiers pointed at the baby carrier as if they didn't believe her, which woke Charlotte up. When she started screaming too, they finally gave in and let Merlin get on with us. As she hauled herself onto the train, she was shaking all over and muttering under her breath. Idiots! They're not even looking properly. Don't they care? Inside the train, it was like a wrestling match. People didn't want to let go of any of their luggage because they were afraid of losing it, so they were squeezing into the seats with all their bags, fighting for space to keep everything together. I thought I'd had to leave the bike in the space at the end of the coach. But Bob shook his head when he saw me take out the padlock. "You don't want to lose sight of it," he said. "Anyone with a hatchet could cut through the little chain." He picked up the bike and hustled it over his head, launching himself down the carrier. Somehow he managed to maneuver the bikes over people's heads and round their suitcases, blowing out a constant stream of cheerful warnings. "Mind your bikes there. Watch out for Lauren, flying cousin Tom. Hey, Merlin, don't let that baby chew the trays. And if your kids could just breathe in a bit." He seemed to know half the people in the carriage, and most of them ducked down out the way without even grumbling, even when he casted the bike onto the table and settled it there up against the window. "Come on," he called back to me. "If you and Peter on opposite sides, you can hold it there. Here. Then it won't be taking up any room." This is due the day that I have my English homework is due, so I only got 2 days. Nice. But I'm going to ask for more time. Because I want it. Somehow we managed to squeeze ourselves in, and Justin sat down next to me with chalk on his lap. Bob unhinged Merlin into the seat beside Paige. Then he packed our bags onto the rack and onto the table and into all the spaces around us. "That's you sorted," he said cheerfully, and disappeared down the carriage to help someone else with a baby. More and more people kept squeezing in. Soon they were standing all down the carriage, holding their children or pinching them onto top heap of bags. It got hotter and hotter, and it was impossible to move. And the train didn't stop for another 2 hours. But no one complained, because we knew we were the lucky ones. We were going to Lemon Judge, wherever that was. Chapter 8. When we finally did start, it was slow journey and boring. There was nothing much to see, and we kept stopping till our other trains passed. After an hour or so, I actually fell asleep, in spite of the bike and the way we were coming in. When I woke, the sun was beginning to set, and we were stopped in the middle of nowhere. Fields, I thought, and cows and trees. Boring. But there was something else too. Bob was leaning over the tail, peering through the bike frame. Just there, a road ran close to the railway line. In between us and the road, one piece of scattered waste ground, was a little group of tents. Not a proper campsite, just half a dozen hop-up tents huddled together, with cars packed beside them. Somehow, someone has strung up a wasting line between 2 trees, and it was heavy, with wet clothes dripping onto the grass. Iron, that's a weird place to camp. "They're not on holiday," Bob said, as if I should have guessed. "Look, it's all British cars." Two little girls about chalk age came out of one of the tents and started chasing each other and down the rear. They were only wearing vests and pants, and their arms and legs were as thin as sticks. Merlin shivered and cuddled Charlotte tighter as the train started again. 10 minutes later, there was another hold-up. Not in a station. We always thought with those, but in the middle of nowhere. "Why don't we just get out here?" Merlin said barely. She was having trouble keeping Charlotte on her lap because she was wiggling so much. We could disappear into the countryside and look after ourselves. Sorry about that, I was like a swallow. "No, we couldn't," Bob shook his head. "All the doors are locked. They don't want to lose us before we get to Lemon Judge." It was another 4 hours before we finally stopped in the station. It was pitch much dark by then, and the soldiers wouldn't let us get off the train. We had to stay where we were, jammed into a smelly, noisy coach until the sky turned pink and the sun started coming up. As it began to get light, people crowded towards the windows to see where we landed up. Land much different, said the names board on the platforms. It looked as if we were on the edge of a small town. Houses stranded alongside a side railway line, and up the strap beyond a wild street lined with trees led up to a dark, ugly church at the top of the hill. There was nothing moving, no people, no cars. The whole town was silent and still. At last the soldiers decided it was light enough to let us off the train. By then most of us were too still to move, and all the little children were asleep too. They didn't like being woken up, so there were lots of screaming, and it got worse when the bags started crashing around. We had to wait until the carriage was half empty before we could pull our bags down and lift the bike off the table. It was much longer before we finally inched the aisle onto the platform. As soon as we stepped off the train, the soldiers started hassling us. They didn't want us hanging around in the station. Lemon Dutch, they kept saying, pointing up the station and up the town. We joined the line of people trailing up the main street, shuffling along beside lines of soldiers. They were watching us all the time, but they didn't need to bother. None of us knew where we were. All we could do was go where they sent us, pulling slowly up the hill. By that time, people had started coming out of their houses. As we stood past, they stopped to stare at us. Old women with shopping bags, kids on their way to school, smart young couples in cars. They watched us walk by, but no one said anything to us. No one even smiled. Took upon my coat. What are they doing? He whispered. I don't like it. They don't look very happy to see us, do they? Bob grinned down at him. I reckon we need a bit of put. He looked at the line of people ahead of us and gave me a nudge. See that woman in front? That one with three toddlers? How could I miss her? She was older than most of the people, and she kept stopping and holding anything up because the children were whining round her legs. They wanted to be carried at once. What a pain, I said. Bob looked at my bike. Reckon you could get a couple of kids on there? That would really help her. He slid my bag off the handlebars and onto his shoulder. Then he putted his hand into the middle of my back and gave me a push. Let's go, he said. He pushed me forward towards the woman, and when we caught up, he tapped her on the arm. Look like you need a bit of help, he said. How about two of your kids on the bike? She looked round, and I thought she was going to hug him. That would be wonderful. Her face was grey and exhausted. The children liked the idea as well. We all started shouting at once. I want to ride the bike, Granny. No, me. Granny, Kara, me. Bob picked up the biggest boy and dumped him on the saddle. Then he lifted the middle one onto the handlebars. You'll have to hold on. That one, woman said. He wiggles. She scooped up the smallest child and sat him on her hip. Now we can really get going. She strolled off, and two kids on the bike started shouting to follow her. The one on the handlebars got at my neck, and the other flung his arm on my waist. They almost trotted me, and the bike went sideways, so all the weight was against my chest. I was going to tell Bob I couldn't manage them. But when an old man stepped out of the shop and leaned towards us. He was wearing a grumpy old cap and carrying a couple of long gloves under his arm. He bought bits off one of the loaves and gave them to the kids on the bike. Then he patted my shoulder and muttered off something in French. I didn't understand a word, but I heard Paige laugh behind me. As soon as the old man trotted off, I looked round at her. What was all that about? I said. She grinned sarcastically. He said you were an umbrella, pin saint, a real little saint. She looked at the kids on the bike and laughed again. He wants to be a saint. I'd rather have a piece of bread. After that, I couldn't throw the kids off the bike, so I took them all the way up the hill. And I realized Bob was right. It was good PV. Some of the people watching us started to smile. And a couple of women patted me on the arm, but no one brought any more bread. At the top of the hill was the ugly church with a little square in front of it. Beyond the square, the street bent round between stone buildings and then pushed down the other side of the hill. Suddenly, the countryside opened out in front of us. At the bottom of the hill, the houses ended and the farmland began. And there, on the very edge of the town, was a big brick building with three or four basketball pitches beside it and open files beyond. At least the files should have been open, but they weren't, and there was no chance of playing anything on the basketball pitches. All the ground around the building was covered in tents. Not little pop-ups like the ones we seen from the train, but blue tunnel tents, hundreds and hundreds of them, pitched in long straight rows, and amongst the tents there were round little shelters made of curtain iron and cardboard and polyethylene. Looking down from the top of the hill, we could see it all. The early morning glimpsed on the metal and wet mud and flickered through the smoke that came drifting up towards us. There was a twitter of distant voices rustling and falling, and the air smelled of ashes and disrespect. Even though it was early, people were moving around. From the top of the hill, they looked tired and aimless, trailing in all directions across the crowded fields. We could see the bare, brown paths their feet had worn between the tents. As soon as we saw it, we all knew that was where we were being sent, the only place where there would be food and shelter, even though it looked full already. We would have to fit in somehow and find a way of living there, because that was lemon juice. Alright, that's chapter 7 to chapter 8. I'm on page 90, but the page I'm actually on is 242, but I still need a bit more time to read it through for you guys. So we've gone to chapter 7 to the middle of chapter 8. Bye! I think it's chapter 8. Let me just check. It's chapter 8. So, bye!